Hi, and welcome to the Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast from FTN Fantasy NFC West preview with Bryan Knowles. I am Aaron Schatz of FTN Fantasy, of course. He is Mike Tanier of the Mike Tanier Substack at miketanier.substack.com. And Bryan Knowles is joining us. You know his writing on the FTN Fantasy DVOA page. And he also was responsible for the NFC West chapters in this year's FTN Football Almanac. Before we get into previewing the NFC West, I want to remind everybody that for a limited time only, we here at FTN are offering a 15% discount to join the FTN family. Use the promo code FTN15 to get 15% off your subscription. Get access to the Fantasy Football Draft Guide, cheat sheets for every league, the industry's #1 rankings and projections, a discount on the FTN Football Almanac, and of course, the home to DVOA with the awesome new Stats Hub that's going to have DVOA sorted by charting stats in the middle of the season this year. It's going to be awesome. Promo code FTN15 gets you 15% off. But sign up now. The clock is ticking down on the website as we speak. Speaking of clocks ticking down, Brandon Aiyuk, what's the deal?
Still a 49er, unless he isn't, unless he is.
Right. When you're listening to this, he may not be, but as we're recording this, he is.
The situation is so fluid, but all drowning over here in rumors and unsubstantiated checkmark speak and everything. It's been this way. It's been a long 84 years this week. It's essentially what it's been like on Aiyuk watch.
It's hard to criticize the 49ers front office because I do like those guys, but I do feel like they may have mishandled this a little bit to make him so angry. And yet at the same time, isn't history filled with whiny receivers who end up getting paid and coming back and everything's happy?
I think it's very easy to criticize the 49ers front office on this one. They do this every year. This is the third year in a row there's been a major holdout going deep into training camp. Last year was Nick Bosa right up until the day, like 2 days before the season started. The day before that, it was Deebo Samuel until I believe it was the first week of August he finally signed. The year before that, it was George Kittle going in. The year before that, it was Fred Warner. They hold off until the last minute every year on these things. It's like they don't know you can do contract negotiations in April. And so they end up paying these guys at the end of every year's free agency cycle. So they overpay everyone just a little bit. And I think the fact that they caved on Bosa at the end of last year, they end up giving Bosa basically everything he wanted. I think that's emboldened Aiyuk. Because if they cracked for Bosa, maybe they'll crack for me too, or they'll get me out of here.
And every time they overpay a little, it creates less leverage and friction, which is where you have this Aiyuk situation where they don't have a lot of cap space for 2025 to throw money at them. Now you can jiggle it. The teams they are negotiating with don't have to jiggle anything to pay him in 2025, 2026, and that's the advantage. And one of the differences this year is it's not just one holdout, it's two.
Yeah, but the Trent Williams holdout is not really going to be a thing, I don't think. It's the holdup there is that they have to figure out what's going on with Aiyuk first, so they know how much money they're paying the wide receivers. It's just a big traffic jam of contract, and nothing is getting sorted until they figure out this Aiyuk situation.
The theory is that they feel like Aiyuk's skill set is not unique, and therefore they can find someone to do the job cheaper, not as well. But that they have to pay guys like Deebo Samuel and George Kittle because their skill sets are more unique. I don't know if that's quite true. Aiyuk is a pretty special wide receiver, I think.
I'd agree. I do think that Deebo is kind of in a different category. There's really not like a junior Deebo out there so much, while there are other deep threat wide receivers. But Aiyuk is in like that top 10 group of deep threat wide receivers. He's not just a pretty good guy who's been elevated in some way. He has taken that step into the maybe not the cream of the crop, maybe at the tippy top, but he's right down there with like that next group of players. And that's what made the Niners offense so explosive last year. That was the difference, the addition of the deep threat. And that's what Aiyuk brought to the Aiyuk is their deep threat guy. If he's not there and they don't get, say, an Amari Cooper or something to immediately replace some of that production, the Niners offense might look more like it did in 2022, 2021, which was still good offenses, but you're missing that, oh, wow, look what you can do now thing.
And he's the younger player, and he's the less banged up player than, say, Debo and Kittle. These guys were taken care of. And you're in win now mode, that's fine. But when you're the potential that somebody's going to have their down year, it's higher for these other guys than it would be for Aiyuk.
Super Glucose wants to know, how much would Aiyuk get from the team the 49ers trade him to for the trade to make? I think what he's asking is, what would the 49ers get in return for the trade to make sense for the 49ers? And my opinion is that because the 49ers are trying to win the Super Bowl this year, draft picks alone, getting that in return is not worth it.
Right.
Like, it's only worth it for them if they get, frankly, Amari Cooper in return. They're trying to win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. That's been the problem with the Steelers as a trade partner. Even going back into April, they don't have the right players to trade. Everyone on the roster is either too good, you're not going to trade TJ Watt or something crazy like this, too pointless because swapping George Pickens for Aiyuk doesn't, change anything, right, or too bad. No one's getting excited about Van Jefferson in the year 2024. So the Steelers keep calling and says, we'll make this deal, we'll make this deal. They don't have anything the 49ers want for 2024. If this happens, I think they might need to involve a third team. They might need to find someone else with an expendable wide receiver who are rebuilding and could use some draft picks. Because I don't think the Steelers can make this deal by themselves. They don't have the pieces.
And the Browns can give you Cooper, but they have no cap space in 2025 and 2026. Then they have to turn to Aiyuk and say, well, let's put a package together. If Aiyuk was amenable to those kind of packages, he'd probably be signing with the 49ers right now. So you may need a three-team deal. Eagles, pick up the phone. Howie will help. Howie will help.
Bonnie Adams doesn't want to be in Vegas. Maybe, Brandon Aiyuk's agent was caught on camera at Raiders practice. Maybe, get
that is something that I've heard, the idea of Adams for Aiyuk, where Aiyuk gives the Raiders something more long-term and Adams gives them an even better receiver to win the Super Bowl this year.
I mean, that would be exciting. Because the whole Steelers trade right now, I would describe the Niners fan base mood as depressed. If you bring in, if you get Devontae Adams something in exchange, that's exciting. You can make that argument for this season. Maybe that makes you worse in the future. But for right now, that's something that gets, that helps get you out of the cycle of the 5 stages of grief the Niners fans are going through every day as the rumors keep going through.
Poor Niners fans. Oh,
I will say that I ran a simulation. What if Aiyuk was traded to Pittsburgh?
Okay.
And in that, the 49ers odds of winning the division dropped from 61% to 52%.
Oh,
and their odds of winning the Super Bowl go from 18.6 to 12.6, which would still make them the favorites by our numbers.
Right.
But by only a tiny, itty-bitty margin ahead of Baltimore and Kansas City. And remember, Aiyuk would be the most DYAR receiving of any receiver to go to a new team the next year.
Interesting.
The current record is Devontae Adams, and Aiyuk had more. Now, obviously, Aiyuk had more, boosted by the San Francisco scheme and everything, but Aiyuk would be the most valuable production-wise wide receiver to switch teams by DYAR ever.
Wow. Who picks up the probability in the NFC that they lose?
Everybody picks up a little bit of probability.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, everybody. Detroit, Dallas, the Rams, Seattle. Super Glucose wants to clarify what contract is too rich for Aiyuk.
I think the Patriots offered an adequate. I think the Patriots offered about $28.5 million reportedly. That's about right for Aiyuk.
Yeah,
that's where I'd put him.
There was talk on Boston radio yesterday as I was driving around that blamed the Patriots for not trying hard enough to get Aiyuk. And that seems like he didn't want to come here.
Right.
And we can talk about why do people not want to come here? To me, the idea, if I'm a player, I would rather go to hot young quarterback than Russell Wilson. But okay, he wants to go to Pittsburgh and not New England. That's okay. All right, that's what he wants.
Right.
But it's not that the Patriots were not willing to pay him, because the reports are the Patriots probably were willing to pay him the most.
Well, he's right up there, yeah. They offered, that sounds like a very fair deal.
Guessing if he doesn't want to come to New England, he don't want to go to Las Vegas either.
No, which is why the 3-team trade. You send him to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh picks go to Raiders, who are kind of rebuilding. Send Adams to San Francisco. Everybody is moderately happy.
That actually sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Aiyuk aside, I mean, this is the favorite, right? Especially if Aiyuk stays. These are the favorites, and these are the Super Bowl favorites. They have the number 1 offensive DVOA projection. They're in the top 10 on defense, even with some changes that got made. You know, they swapped out some defensive tackles and edge rushers for other defensive tackles and edge rushers. The NFC being easier than the AFC paves their road, right? Because only 4 of our top 12 teams are NFC teams. So it's easier for San Francisco or Detroit or whoever to make the Super Bowl than top AFC teams. Do you guys see anything wrong with the idea that the 49ers are the favorite? They're the favorites in the market too, I believe.
Yeah.
Favorites in the market, I believe they are to win the conference at plus 250. Which, I mean, we're higher favorites on them than even the market is. But I think if you do put in any like sort of tax for the Aiyuk situation, they line up perfectly, and that seems reasonable. Brian, has the Brock Purdy interception hurricane subsided? Has Tropical Storm Brock settled down?
It has, in fact, settled down. You know, the people on interception watch on practices always try to throw these things out of proportion. It's fine. 49ers fans need to relax for 5 minutes. I swear to God, it'll be okay.
It'll be fine. Jimmy Garoppolo had practices like this all the time. It'll be fine.
Oh, absolutely. And what was his DVR his last year in San Francisco?
Right.
Reminder, if you are watching us live, which we do on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern, please feel free to ask questions and we'll have a little discussion about the NFC West. Let's talk about other teams. There are other teams in this division. In fact, like the other teams in this division don't suck. Like the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks, I believe are teams 5 and 6 in our rankings in the NFC. Right? So let's start with the Rams, where I think we can agree it's likely that the offense should be a little bit better and healthier, and the defense should be a little bit worse because there is this kid named Aaron Donald, and he's not playing anymore.
It's a little bit of a tough one to replace. I like they drafted basically 4 players to replace them, and if they could just smash them all into one guy, that might actually work.
Let's not make any guarantees about their health on offense right now. Puka Nacua is week to week. They have 3 offensive linemen out. They've also had a defensive rash of injuries. I know Darian Kendrick was out. One of their other cornerbacks, I couldn't pull it up quickly.
Kendrick, I think, is out for the year. I believe.
Yeah. So like, let's not pencil in like ideal health for this team when right now they're going through a lot.
I will point out that the Rams will set an NFL record for safeties named Cameron.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Wait.
Because they have both Cameron Curl and 3rd-round pick Cameron Kitchens.
And they're both K Camerons.
They are.
K Camerons. Kamren. They spell it the same.
K Camerons are like male Karens, man. Look out. There'd be a lot of...
I do have a little bit of faith in McVay that... Okay, I don't know if I have faith that if Kupp and Nacua are both hurt.
Yes.
But I feel like they can get through a few weeks of one of those 2 guys getting hurt because they did last year. They got through a few weeks of Kupp being hurt. Like if they only, even though it's not, the 3rd receiver is Darius Robinson and there's not a great receiving depth on this team. I feel like McVay's system can get through a few weeks of one of these guys getting hurt.
Right. And when they're both out there, they have an argument for being like the top 1-2 receiver pair, or at least right up there with anyone else in the league. I'm so impressed with Puka Nacua last season because so many times you get these rookies who like we found the one thing they do well. I'm going to do that 8 million times, and then we'll try to develop them into a full receiver later. The fact that Nacua was able to start as the short pass yak guy, and then move out to be actually better out wide than he was in the slot by DVOA, that was really impressive.
Early season, by the way, for the Rams, if they are missing somebody, they start out at the Lions, then they're at Arizona. And then you get the 49ers. That's a possibility where if you're not full strength, you're going 1-2 very, very potentially, which can be a problem for a team. I don't worry about the Rams in terms of like them being okay, being good. It's when they're in that wild card soup where if you start losing some of your assets and losing a game here or there, you already start out behind the 8 ball in terms of tiebreakers.
Right. And we all agree it's very likely that the Rams are in the wild card soup because the 49ers are so good.
Right.
Yeah, but they're one of the nice bits of the soup. They're floating to the top there. I think they and the Packers are going to be fighting out for that 5th seed and getting to play the NFC South champion in the first round. I am really high on the Rams. I like their draft class quite a bit. Sean McVay is fantastic in the way he's converted the Rams into this more heavy power team over the past couple of years. Has been very impressive. Health problems are there for everyone, but I think the Rams are going to be all right. I think they're going to be contending. I think they're going to, they're not going to surprise anyone this year like they did last year, where we all wrote them off entirely.
Yeah, well, last year's draft class was one of those amazing, like the lower round picks were amazing. I will say something interesting about their draft class, which is Blake Corum is not very highly rated by our backcast projection system. But you want to know who else was not highly rated by backcast? Kyron Williams. So that's sort of it, right? That's sort of, maybe the Rams have something here that backcast is missing. I don't know.
They have a certain system fit, perhaps.
Yeah. Let's talk about the sponsor of our podcast, and that's Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports and the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Underdog is now offering a new customer FTN special with up to $250 on your first time deposit. The Underdog app is easy to use, and new best ball drafts drop every week. With the NFL season less than a month away, now is the time to start drafting to prepare for your home leagues. Sign up with the promo code FTN and claim a 50% deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. NFL season is here, and who better to celebrate with than Underdog Fantasy, the new home of Bill Belichick, which is weird. Good for Underdog for like roping him in. Those Bellustrator segments on the Patriots, like, the weekly Patriots fan show or whatever, were always really good, but it's a weird marriage.
Well, yeah, he's got a young girlfriend to take care of. She's my son's age. He's got to stay current. Support Bill Belichick, folks. Support him at Underdog Fantasy.
Seattle Seahawks. Speaking of teams that moved on from old coaches, the new home of Mike McDonald, bringing in the question, as we always know, success as a coordinator does not necessarily translate to success as a head coach. But it will be interesting to see him install his defensive scheme with a lot of changeover on the defense, with new safeties and Byron Murphy there, the first-round pick, defensive tackle. A lot of offensive line changes for this team, a lot of linebacker changes. Skill position players are basically the same, and Geno Smith is kind of underrated at this point.
Okay. Geno does not excite me in any way, shape, or form. Geno is fine.
He's fine.
And having a fine quarterback puts you ahead of a bunch of teams, especially the NFC. But Geno's fine.
He's fine.
You don't have to immediately replace him.
I actually think Geno is exciting, and the reason why I say that is because Geno throws deep a lot with those receivers. There is some I think Geno is more he's more excited than he might be about the same quality as a Derek Carr, but he plays a much more exciting game than a Derek Carr.
All right, I'll grant you that, definitely.
Absolutely. He was hurt for a couple of days earlier in camp. He is back. Only other news that's getting really out of Seattle camp right now is that DK Metcalf is going ham and trying to beat up all of his teammates, and they're working on that. But otherwise, it's been relatively quiet coming out of Seahawks camp.
I mean, I think this team is in the wild card mix. They do not seem to me like it's likely. McDonald would have to really revolutionize the defense, which, given the inconsistency of defense, is possible. But I think for this team to be a Super Bowl contender, you would have to have a revolutionized defense.
Yeah, and that seems incredibly unlikely in one season. The Ravens had such specific requirements for size that was totally different than what Pete Carroll was doing, that it's just going to take a few years just to cycle players in and out there. I like McDonald's hiring, and I like the idea that we're in a division with Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. Let's find the best defensive guy we can do to scheme up against them for 4 games a season. I like the move there rather than getting the 15th best offensive guy available, someone who washed Sean McVay's car once. But yeah, it's gonna take it's a transitional period. It's gonna take a year or two before this really kicks off.
Yeah, I specifically do not think that either Tyrell Dodson or Jerome Baker can be Roquan Smith.
Safe bet.
Their concern there is also with the offensive line you mentioned. There's a lot of like new faces there. Abraham Lucas is on the PUP list right now. They brought in Connor Williams at center. Connor Williams is coming off an ACL tear at the end of last season. A lot of transition, a lot of hopes there. And some guys who were very good in 2022 and then kind of backstepped in 2023 they're counting on. Laken Tomlinson's another new face there. Old story in Seattle where the offensive line is like a big question mark there, but it's a pretty significant question mark for them.
Yeah. Let's finish up with the Arizona Cardinals. This is one of our more controversial projections because we have their offense very low. Because Kyler Murray has not been a star since early in 2021. He has kind of been average when he's played since then.
He's been average in a weird way too, because he'll have these games or at least these quarters where he looks like that quarterback from September and October of 2021, where he was kind of on that MVP pace. The Cardinals were undefeated and with Cliff Kingsbury's spread offense. And then since he went down with that hamstring injury in the mid-2021, he did not put up consecutive games with a positive passing DVOA until the last 2 games of last season. And one of those was against the Eagles, who were actively on fire at that point in time.
Yeah. Reports from the Cardinals camp are super high on their offense, but I feel like almost every camp reports are optimistic, right? It's always like there's like 3 or 4 camps where you get pessimistic reports, and every other camp, everyone is optimistic, in part because there's reason to be optimistic about every team until the injuries start hitting. Right. Until the injuries randomly hit some teams more than others. But overall, I feel like, they're depending on Paris Johnson to be ready to move to left tackle. I don't think James Conner can be quite as good as he was last year because of regression. Marvin Harrison seems like a total pro from the start, but, the other receivers, it's Michael Wilson and then group of dudes.
People like Greg Dortch. I've never understood this, but some people really, really, really like Greg Dortch.
I've heard positive things about, say, Jones coming out of camp. I've heard a lot about Wilson. I don't understand Dortch either. Remind you that, like, the Arizona press pool is like 3 guys. They're like Howard and a couple of the others. I like them all, but you're not going to get a diversity of opinion about them. One last thing, by the way, I don't know if you saw this new rule from the NFLPA. Every time we mention Marvin Harrison, we have to put a quarter in the jar. So That's 2. So
this crazy thing where he will not allow them to sell his jersey.
Right.
We just have to go the Tecmo Bowl route. It's Cardinals wide receiver out there who's number 1 for Rookie of the Year.
Why?
Maybe I should do that in the book next year. We'll just call him wide receiver 1 Cardinals.
Yes.
But he's been getting some very positive accolades as expected. It's just, what do you make of that? Okay, you've got a wide receiver 1, you've got a quarterback who has been on and off, like occasionally good. Show me what else you've got.
What they don't have is a defense at all.
Right. The defense is poor, even though they extended Zaven Collins now that they figured out what to do with him.
Yeah.
They have some interesting young corners.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of interesting young corners instead of like a stud young corner, right? Like it's like, oh, Garrett Williams and this guy and that guy and hopefully some of them turn into a thing. And then we added Sean Murphy-Bunting also. And there's Max Melton, who's a 2nd-round rookie. And let's hope that this all turns into a secondary.
Yeah. And we're getting all these positive accolades about the offense in training camp, which tells you a little bit of how the secondary might be performing right now.
Yes. Right. Yeah. It reminds me of I went to Patriots camp last weekend, and it kind of reminds me of that. I was talking a little bit. It was National Reporter Day at Patriots camp. Robert Mays, Kevin Clark, and I were all there on the same day. Cool. And I talked to Kevin Clark. We were talking about how do you know when offense is way ahead of the defense or the opposite. In the Patriots case, it's the opposite. Defense is way ahead of the offense. How do you know when that's the one unit is really good? And how do you know when it's the other unit is really bad?
And the answer is it takes like national people have a better chance. Like when you're going from camp to camp to camp to camp to camp constantly, your eyes sort of adjust to it. Local guys who, if the team has had a lot of fluctuation year after year after year, can kind of figure it out. Otherwise, it's a mixture of guesswork and, that was obviously the 1st-round pick against the 6th-round pick, and you can make decisions on that. But it's tricky. And sometimes it's just the way you frame it or what you're hoping or how you hope to frame the story, at your outlet.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell the story. I talk a lot about teams that we project badly. You can tell the story that you can tell the story of them being much better than our projection, right? Kyler finds his old form. Marvin Harrison is outstanding. One of the other receivers kind of comes up. They get the offensive line together. Jonah Williams is good, right? Like the defense improves to average, and suddenly you've got a playoff team. You can at least tell the story, which, I keep talking about the New York Giants as a team where you can't really tell the story of how we're wrong. Most teams, you can tell the story of how they succeed, and you can tell the story of how the Cardinals work. I just don't think it's likely.
Right. It is interesting because so much of it is dependent on how Murray performs. And we have seen good Murray before. It's not like, will Trevor Lawrence ever be like the number one pick guy? Or will Anthony Richardson be what all the highlight reel wants, or any of these kind of things? We have seen good Kyler Murray for an extended period of time. Right. It's just that was like 12 years ago, right? So, that's what makes years. Yeah. That's what makes it so weird for Arizona, because it's easy to see them being good because we've seen the player that they have, the player who was that good once, and he's got all these excuses. He's been hurt, his line has been hurt, his receivers have been hurt. But at some point, you have to overcome all these issues around you. If you are the quarterback worth all the millions and millions of dollars they paid him, you have to overcome these problems around you and look like the superstar. And he just hasn't for 2.5 years.
And it's a long time into the guy's career when we have to do all this. If this happens, this happens, they go 9-7-1 and they squeak in as a wild card and they, lose to the Lions in the first round of the playoffs. It's a tough place to be in. By the way, I don't know if you saw this. Cliff Kingsbury was talking about Jaden Daniels and praising him for how much he studies.
Oh, we're bringing that back again. Oh, no.
We'll bring that back. Let's bring that back.
I'm going to go play Call of Duty right now.
Who was it who was talking up? I think it was Malik Neighbors who was talking about his Call of Duty things. He's catching everything in sight in Giants.
Oh, yeah, the reports from him. But, I mean, we had him projected awesome. So, right. I mean, listen, the reports say that all the receivers that went high are as good as advertised. I haven't heard a lot of Brian Thomas talk, but, there's plenty of Harrison, Neighbors, and Odunze and how awesome they are. And I think the main reason you don't hear Brian Thomas talk is that Jacksonville's a smaller market.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're looking at other players right now.
All right, that does it for the NFC West. Folks, thanks everybody who's watching us live. Thanks to everybody who's listening afterwards. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show and join us live Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. Mike and I will be back next week to talk about the NFC North. Okay. Don't forget about the limited time FTN 15% discount. Use the promo code FTN15 to get 15% off a subscription to FTN's premium offerings, which are, trust me, really going to be awesome this year. Plus, you get a discount on the Almanac for those of you who do not yet own the Almanac. And please, if you don't own the Almanac yet, what are you doing? Go out and buy FTN Football Almanac 2024. Available in PDF form at ftnfantasy.com/almanac or in gigantic mosquito killing book form at Amazon. All right. That does it for today. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Brian. We'll be back next Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Enjoy the first weekend of preseason action.
Woo!
Everybody.
Giants, Lions. Don't get any better than that. It does, but enjoy it.
Right. Well, apparently Bills Bears is going to have the starters for at least a couple of series.
Yes.
Mahomes and tonight it's Drake May against whoever is the third string quarterback for Carolina. Because Dalton, I believe, is hurt.
Dalton's hurt, and you can't see any of the.
Dalton will not play, so I don't know who their third string quarterback is, but it will be sad.
It will either be Jake Luton or it'll be Jack, not Jake, but Jack Plummer, who had a pretty fine and strange career that ended in Louisville, but went to 5 other teams. So
I call him Jack the Snack. Jack the Snack Plummer.
Jack the Snack. Oh, God.
For the Carolina Panthers. All right, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday. So long.